FM and 900 AM WURD. Independent Black Media.
On nights like this, I ride. Turn the music up to keep from crying. Wait till that sunshine. Please don't let the darkness keep me low halfway to the home base, yeah. Like a field trip, whoa. It's a real trip. And over your head, it's a guilt trip, yeah. To the south side, wow. It's a real trip. It's not a quick trip. It stays with ya, love taxes. It's a real trip. On nights like this, I ride. Turn the music up to keep from crying. Wait till the sunshine. Please don't let the darkness keep me low halfway to the home base, yeah. Like a field trip, whoa. It's a real trip. I'm asking who can say you can't bait, you can't bait.
Greetings, good evening, and welcome to Save Space with sincerely today, Brother Shomari. Actually, today, tomorrow, and Thursday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, Brother Shomari will help you save space as we journey from 7 to 9 p.m. having conversations about community so we can develop a better connection, and that's what we're going to do. I love the theme and the title and the concept, and we're going to keep it in that spirit. We're going to have 3 days of what I call village building dialogues. Just different people going to weigh in. We're going to have what Malcolm called the fireside chat, where we converse about how we bring back, how we resurrect, how we restore the Black village towards Black life. That's what we're going to do. So I'm trying to multitask over here. I was intentionally cutting off my face, though. That was my point. I was kind of doing like the half side Miles Davis, all blue kind of album cover. But okay,
No,
I'll move over.
you. We don't want that.
How you doing, Killer J? How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Brother Shomari?
I'm doing pretty good. Trying to get used to this what's this called that we're on, StreamYard?
StreamYard, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've done it before, but never kind of in this setting. So I got to really kind of get used to it. But how you doing?
All is well. Trying to stay cool and beat the heat.
Settle me in, producer Killer J. I'm a little nervous right now. So give me some wooside tips so we can get started. Let me know who I got with us so we can jump right in.
Yeah, take it easy. I'm excited for the conversation, the village building, the next 3 days. You were the first choice when they said who we want. I said, let's call Brother Shomari. So I'm excited about the conversation.
All right. You know what, Killer J? I'm gonna put you on the spot before we even jump into this conversation, because I actually been thinking a lot about you in this conversation.
Oh.
So, Killer J, kind of think, it's funny. I think one of the, and I want you to say yes or no to this. I think one of the things people ask me all the time about stuff, and they give me a lot of feedback about things. So relative to this village building thing, I'm a get in, but the theme is really going to be about heart, right? I think that we've lost our heart. We've closed our hearts as Black people, particularly as we deal with one another because of a lot of pain and vulnerability. People use the word trauma, whatever you want to call it. But I think we have a problem of the heart when it comes to rebuilding and restoring the Black village. And, it's funny because that's one of the words that people don't associate with me, and I really don't associate with myself. I'm on a journey to find my heart again. I don't think I've ever really totally lost it, though. And so I'm wondering, as you interacted with me as my producer for all that time, and all the outer image of Brother Shomari and the anger or whatever people thought, the seriousness, I'm surprised at how many people are surprised when I crack a joke or when I'm kind of low key and cool. Like people act like I'm out of character. So I'm just wondering, reflect a little bit about our time together, particularly from the perspective of me as a black man, an older man working with you as a younger black woman, because that's a theme that's in my head a lot. I think that one of the violations in our village that we have to deal with, and part of this conversation is like we're going to spend some time really pulling some things out from under the rug, because we can't get to a victorious village, we can't get our vitality back until I contend that we deal with some real violations that happen in the village. And one of those violations often is the interaction between adult black males and young black women, and how that, when it goes wrong, facilitates mistrust. It facilitates a lot of defensiveness and vulnerability, for lack of a better word. So I'm just wondering, I really want to push the envelope on this a little bit. And I was just wondering, always, like, working with you, your perspective of me as a black man in that role.
Working with you, you are very passionate. You are a very passionate person, and I think that's really where your heart is. People I think misconstrue your passion um for anger, because I don't think you're really angry. I think you care about what you care about and you want to see things done. And I respect that about you. Working with you, it was a learning opportunity for me, because we came in this thing from two totally different perspectives. I was I'm going to say a young privileged but not privileged kid who came up in a religious Christian background, versus where when I met you at life, you were, I like to say, at the awakening moment of, trying to wake people up to see what the diaspora can do and why the diaspora is important. And at that moment of my life, I had no clue what that even was.
Mm.
So working with you was always learning. Yeah, we had some bumps, and I got frustrated sometimes. But at the end of the day, I sat and I thought about it, like, and it came out to the end of, I really respect you and all that you do and all that you stand for, because you don't waver in it.
Right.
And I really respect that about you, because again, you're passionate about it. You want to make sure that young boys and young girls have things to do, and you're really passionate about making men, you know? And that's great, coming from a home where, I didn't have a father figure growing up. It's great to see a black guy saying, listen, we need to take charge of these young boys and help them become men.
So Kelly J, right there you go. So stay right there, because this is the next question. Now this, and I want your truth, because one of the things I'm always so passionate about, and I don't think people get, and that's why I want to have this conversation. I'm also passionate about black women, and particularly black girls, knowing their power and not being scared to walk in that as well. I think that we don't, like, I think people know and probably respect that I have a track record working with black males and black men. One of the things that people might not know about me is that I take the empowerment of young black women just as serious. And I try to, in my own way, encourage and push and say, take the chance, go after it, kind of thing. Your thoughts about that? Because I don't, you're a young woman who I had a chance to kind of be, work with, and hopefully kind of embody that. But I'm just curious, because I think that that's part of, I think that, and we always talk about black males needing black men. I don't think we talk about the role that black men play with black girls in the village as a source of strength and power when it's done correctly. And we know what happens when it's done incorrectly, where the news is replete with those stories. But what's the role of a black man in encouraging a young black woman to go after her power?
No, that's actually really important, and you do that as well. And I always appreciated how you had the male perspective, and then in a segment or two later, you had a woman's perspective. That was always wonderful. Um, but it's very important, because being a girl who grew up, and I have to say, with an adopted father, a godfather, because I went out and found that father figure that I did not have. It's important, because it's the man's job to teach the woman their value and purpose, so we won't look for it and validate it in other things.
Mm,
So
mm.
I think that you encouraging young women and encouraging black men to encourage black women is a vital role in helping our community grow. because a lot of times when the girls don't get that validation from their dad or that father figure or that supportive black male role, should I say, in their life, they go and they try to find it in other ways.
Very good point. Very good point. And I think that as we talk about building community, building the village. So when y'all hear me say village, I'm talking about community. I'm talking about the Black community. I just use the term village because it just feels friendlier and, more kind of the imagery I get is around African-centered rites of passage and people working together in a collective communal sense. But when most of you all say community, if you hear me say village, that's what I'm talking about. And I want to have a conversation over these next 3 days about our need to rebuild community, because I really believe, quite frankly, to get down to the politics of it, that if we don't rebuild and restore the Black village will become more decimated. I believe that there are policies, there are actions, these things about the curfew, all hands on deck. I believe that there's a policy apparatus that's being constructed right in our faces right now that is designed to eviscerate the Black village. And that if we don't become more intentional about the restoration of that village, the resurrection of that village, such that we can restore our connection with our young people in particular, I believe that the ramifications of us not doing that will be felt across generations. I believe that that is the destiny of our generation right now. It is the duty of our generation. And the way we do it is to restore our cultural values, to restore our family units, and to restore the village. So that's the conversation we're going to have on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Save space with Brother Shomari. Conversations about community and connection. And to help me do that, y'all know whenever I call in reinforcements, I feel like the conversation is serious. And I'm part of what I know I'm going to need, because I'm going to use my own journey and my own self, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all, as a mirror. I'm signed up to do that. If you all were with me on Sunday and Friday, y'all know I shared this Beyond Expectations, letters to my father, letter to myself. I did that as an act of open-heartedness and full-heartedness, because I really want to use this journey. I'll use myself as the reflective mirror in this journey. So I intend, if I, hopefully the village allows me to feel safe and to feel supported in this journey. I will use a lot of my own personal experiences and reflections, but this is also a village conversation. I just think that there are some things we can no longer hide from if we want to restore the connections between our generations, between our brothers and our sisters, between our youth and our elders, between our institutions and our individuals, between our conscious and unconscious. I don't care how you want to divide the pie. The division is killing us, and we need to figure out how we come together and make it our duty to come together and rebuild the village. So I called in my brother Nasheed Ali, and hopefully, I don't know if Sister Malele has joined us yet, but Sister Malele, so that we can have, and I'm hoping that they will sit with me through this journey so that we can have a village conversation, village dialogues about how we do this restoration. So before we go to commercial break, Sister Malele, Brother Nasheed, introduce yourselves. Let's start with you, Elder. Let's go with Elder first.
All right, I'm Nasheed Ali. Some of you know me as Pop Grow Something from the Shomari Groundings program on Sundays. And I'm a storyteller, and I've worked with Shomari in the community. And he called me in to have a dialogue with Sister and himself.
And that sister would be Sister Malele. So introduce yourself, Sister Malele.
Yes, peace and blessings. Thank you for having me on. I'm a definite full-fledged WRD fan. Been with the family since back WHAT times, and I'm here because I'm someone who is a community representative of those that I love, those that are of my descendants, my people, and I'm also an educator. I'm just someone who's also passionate about what happens out here with our people, not just when they're doing well, not just when they're doing okay, and definitely when they need assistance and support, even when they don't want to recognize it or to receive it. I'm just that person. I'm that sister out here.
All right, so I'm going to ask both of y'all before commercial break. And Pop, you got it. When I'm talking, you got to go on mute because I hear the back, whatever that's called. So what I'm going to ask before we go to commercial break, and I'm doing this facetiously, so I'm not going to ask you to really put your hand on your heart and your hand on the Bible, whatever. But I'm asking both of you all to commit, as I'm asking anybody who calls in and shares with us in this journey. And you do that by simply dialing 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Y'all see it rolling across the screen. So check us out, Facebook Live and all that, by the way. Authenticity, people. We're going for full-hearted, open-hearted, sharing truth. Because I believe, and I talked with both of you all before this dialogue, that for me, this is an important conversation. I've been a part of a lot of things where we've hidden the truth. And I believe that our hiding this truth gets in the way. It's really destroyed, or at least diminish the vitality of our village. And the vitality is the life force. It's the essence. And I believe a lot of the violations that we've allowed to happen and we kept silent or we don't talk about, that's the reason our children don't have a Black spirit and a Black vitality in the energy that they're giving forward. That's why we're controlled by impulse instead of the pulse. And so if we're going to move from impulse to pulse, one of the first things we have to do is start telling the truth. And so that when we gain our victories, we're actually gaining victories at the right leverage point so that we can free and release our hearts and the spirit of our community in order to bring Black life. So I'm just going to ask each of you before we go to commercial break, just to give me an Ashe, Amen, Aibobo, a manla, that as we do our fireside chat in the spirit of Malcolm X and restoration of the village, that you both, like myself, and my commitment as well, is that we enter this full-hearted, open-hearted, kind-hearted, and brave-hearted. I need to hear it. I need to hear it. I see the Ankh and the Black Power fists, but I need to hear y'all say, Ashe, yes, something.
Ashe, wait.
Ashe.
All right. Come up on a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to have fireside chat in the village. Moving from heartless to heartful in order to resurrect the village. Again, if you want to join our conversation, you have something to share and add, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. We'll talk with you after these messages.
Honesty, and professionalism. Clark Roofing is a second-generation master roofer, installing top-quality roofing systems for commercial and residential properties across the tri-state area. For fast, dependable service, call 215-365-ROOF. That's 215-365-7663. Tropical Smoothie Cafe Philly, the #1 smoothie cafe in Philadelphia, serving their guests a variety of smoothies and delicious food products such as wraps, flatbreads, sandwiches, and salads. Tropical Smoothie is located at 1600 North Broad Street, Unit 4. Eat better, feel better. Online ordering is available, and you can find us on all third-party delivery services. This ad is brought to you by the North Broad Renaissance and Truist Foundation.
The Black Words Book Club.
Word Radio's conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. The Black Words book for July is White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America by Penn's Dr. Anthea Butler. Be sure to listen live as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that contains consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it, Tuesday, July 13th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for Word members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit wordradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color. Save space with Sincerely Sarita.
Sincerely Sarita.
Right now on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Independent Black Media.
Full of hate. Crying out for someone to save the day. I tell you, God makes no mistake. Your time will come. Have faith. You're watching others so hard. So much so you forgot to pray to the Lord. You're so fazed by the outside world. Don't forget, your peace lives within. Butterfly, lost in the night, running out of faith, but your wings are still bright. Hold on, don't you cave in yet. Your spirit's much stronger, don't you forget. Butterfly, lost in the night, running out of faith, but your wings are still bright. Hold on, don't you cave in yet. Your spirit's much stronger, don't you forget.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'm settling into the chair right now. You know, hopefully I'll get all my little anxiety out the way, and I step my game up a little bit on Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll be flying high. But right now, we're gonna come back down a little bit. We got to start. We got to not run. So I have this working theory that's pretty simple, and I believe that deep, because sometimes people say, "Oh, you too deep," or "you deep," or whatever. I believe that deep is really a function of making what is simple, basic, and obvious simple, basic, and obvious. I believe that that's the function of being deep, is to take stuff that people normally would run from because it should be crystal clear, but we develop all of these deflections. We develop these defenses and delusions so that we don't have to deal with the intensity of the thing. And so for me, getting deep is just like, nah, it's really right there in front of your face. It's simple, it's basic, and it's clear. And we're going to keep it simple, basic, and clear. So don't run. That's where the raw truth is. And so we're going to try to do it that way. But we're going to do it in a way of maintaining a sense of open-heartedness, full-heartedness, kind-heartedness, and brave-heartedness. So there's no intention towards meanness, no intention towards malice, but there is an intention towards truth-telling. And I just want to honor that. I ask that whoever joins me in these conversations throughout the week honors that as well, both as a guest or as a caller. Or today, I'm not really referring to Pop and Sister Malele as guests. They're co-conversants, co-conversants in this conversation. We're having a fireside chat in the spirit of Malcolm X in the community. So I just want to lay out what I feel is a very simple paradigm of village building that I want us to operate from, and then we'll open up the conversation. I believe that there are ABCs of village building: attachment, belonging, and connection. And as basic as that sounds, when you look at all the psychological literature, that's pretty much all they tell you, is that people who have a sound sense of what they're attached to and who they're attached to, their attachment, their belonging, and their connection, receive direction. And that is the essence of sound well-being choice making or decision making. When that is precarious or when that is unstable, then you begin to have problems. And I believe that we have a problem in the village right now where we cannot compel our young people, particularly, but it's our people in general, towards a higher calling, a higher purpose of village building, because we have some things we have to atone for. We have a lot of shame and guilt in our communities. We have a lot of things that we as a village have not delivered to our young people, but yet we want to compel our young people to stand and do the right thing on behalf of the village. I think we have some atonement we must do. I think we have not adequately grieved or bereaved as a people regarding the losses that we suffer to Black life across generations. I don't think we've engaged in proper grieving, proper releasing, proper bereavement. So that's atonement, bereavement, and then correction. I don't believe we've engaged in the course correction process fully, adequately, and intentionally. And last but not least, discipline. There's a discipline that is needed for us to overcome impulse and to move into pulse. So as we're moving into pulse, attachment, belonging, connection, direction, impulse, to overcome it, we have to deal with atonement, bereavement, correction, and discipline. That's a fundamental framework that I'm operating from. So where I want to stand right now is in this space of hoping to land in some level of a collective atonement process that we do as Black people in the village. That's where I want to land. I don't want to start there because the question becomes, what are some of the dynamics in the village that we actually need to atone for? I believe that there are violations in our village that we've stood by, not as individuals, because some people have stepped into these moments, but as a collective group of people. There's some violations that we witness happening in our village, cycles of violation that I believe as a village we have not stepped into to halt and to say, no, no more. That will not be the norm in the way we deal with Black children or Black women or Black men or Black elders. And I believe we at some point as a community, before we can expect our people to step into what we expect of them, we have to atone as a village for not being there for them on some of these matters of violation. That being said, I'm wondering your thoughts about some of these violations that we know are happening in our village that we need to deal with such that we can talk about atonement vis-a-vis those. I hope that question is clear, and if so, I want to start with you, Sister Malele. You're on mute. I just heard you click, so.
Am I here now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So from what I understand, if I heard you correctly, and thank you for that opening, it is that what I gather, it all has to do with relationships, in summary to me. And that's where we have to do the building and the bonding. And unfortunately, in some of the areas, when you talk about atonement and things of that nature, if you don't have strength in the area of relationships building and how you can communicate with someone, even at your angriest times, even when you're that much more disappointed in someone, or not to take advantage of someone as well if they're doing really good and you only want to be around them and with them because they are. So at polar opposites, it has people in our community, in my opinion, that are having issues with, they only want to be with you when you're doing real good. And if you're doing bad, they really don't want to deal with you unless they can maybe in some instances gain some money from you because of that illness or personhood that's not being responsible at that time. So for me, it's all about relationships in those areas.
But I want to push you a little harder. What about what types of, like, the question is, I believe that there are some systemic, when I say systemic, I mean repeated. It's not individual situations. Like, we got some stuff around violation in relationships that we need to deal with. Like, for instance, I'll start so everybody can kind of loosen up. I think we need to parent differently. I think Black parenting and Black parents by design create limits to Black children's aspirations because we parent from a place of fear. We parent in many ways like the slave master dealt with their slaves on the plantation. I think that psychology and that spirit is still with us in the way we rear and raise Black children. We raise them from a place of fear. It's almost like we say, I want to beat the spirit out of you before the slave master gets you. I want to break you before they break you. And I think, and of course, it's not everybody. This is not an individual conversation, but I do know, and I listen to children, and I know I look in the mirror with myself. I know that there was a time when, as a parent, I was parenting out of fear. I felt like I had to constrain my child's mouth and spirit and energy because I want to start with that, because I think that we got to pull these violations forward so that we can adequately deal with them and atone for them. So I want to come back to you, Sister Malele, and see if you can put some more meat on the generic thing of relationship.
So I'm gonna say all praises to the ancestors. My parents, they definitely raised me differently than I know a lot of my cousins had. I'm gonna even go within my own family, and I was able to recognize that early. And part of that is I understand from the perspective of a parent parenting, or an auntie or uncle being fearful of what's out here, and having some things of wanting to guide them, not necessarily to beat the spirit out of them. No, not to that extreme. That's why I said you can have those polar opposites. But I do recognize why it is that a parent would be concerned, right? Like right now, you already mentioned about the curfew that's happening right now in our city. Yeah, I read it. I know the times, I know the age groups, and I also feel that can be very problematic in a lot of ways. However, we also know that you have people who, in the back of their mind, they're like, these kids, they haven't been in school, they just running rampant. We just had these robberies in our area, and they trying to point a finger to it. They're trying to say who it is and how it is that they want to connect them into another frame of, I can make money off of you because now you're going to be in jail, you're going to be in a youth study center. And so when you have a family that is fearful of that circumstance, however way possible, they're going to try to figure out how to connect themselves to that child to say, don't you get your behind beat by me worse than somebody else. And that's the fear. And so where I feel as if things that need to happen and be supportive of parents or community differently is, places such as that people go for religious worship as an example. I'm not sure how often parents and classes happen there. I'm also not sure of how often schools, and not just necessarily on back to school nights, touch on these type of topics. And so therefore, when you have people who are in educator spaces where they can show a little bit of the kuumba, their creativity, and be free to do so, then that's when you know for a fact you need to touch on those topics. And one of the places that, when I was a very young, early 20s educator, that allowed for me to see that, tag, like I can communicate this with the parents that I'm talking with in the community, and not get a slap on the wrist and say, that's not a part of the curriculum. We're not supposed to address those things. And the place that I'm speaking of that allowed for that to happen was in the Freedom School movement, where at that location, it allowed for people to have a wide-eyed moment in some ways where they were never allowed to experience that, with people who were designed and taught and certifications to teach them. You have people who are afraid to actually reach out and educate on what they've known has impacted them the most and the worst. And like you said, why would we not have a public school system, charter school system, a private school system talking about these things, and talking about it with a sincerity of wanting it to be better, not just talking down to them and saying this is what you should be doing. No, how is it that you might even be doing it in your household? And who is it that attests to it?
There we go. Let's keep the truth coming. Baba Nashi, your thoughts on this? Some violations in the village that we need to pull forward and deal with because we keep repeating cycles. If we don't.
Sure. So the name of Sarita's program is Save Space, and you can say safe space, and the violations would be coming in. How do you violate a safe space and a saved space? How do you violate our space? So one of the areas, parenting is one that was named, but then you have education too. I think a lot of violations occurred within the educational system, from kindergarten on up to the 12th grade. That's the city youth right there. After 12th grade, they go off to the army, or they might go to college, or they might go to work, but the city youth go from kindergarten on up to the 12th grade. So say in the 50s, I'm going back to the 50s, and I've talked about this before, you had a dedicated group of teachers that came out of Cheney, and in their heart, they had a commitment to teach young Black youth. But somewhere along the line, over the years, over the decades, all of that eroded. I don't know when it came in. It came in maybe when they were arguing for contracts. So the contract was more important than the youth. The contract was more important than the community. You had a lot of problems, a lot of behavior problems going on in school. You had, when I was coming up, you had gang wars. It wasn't great, but it was happening. So these teachers, when they turn their head and they say, well, I'm just going to let it go, it just mushrooms into what you have today. So if you look at the education system and what's going on today, say a lot of the people that engage in gun violence and killing us, do they know how to read? You have to ask yourself, do they know how to read? Do they know how to reason and think? Not if they didn't go to school, or not if they went to school and tuned out, because they didn't have that connection that, as Sister Malele said, and I like to hail Sister Malele, like Sister Malele said, it's the relationship. You sever that bond between teacher and student, teacher and community. One of the things that I always remember, they said that for a youth to go to school, he spends more time in school than he does home.
Right.
So he goes to school at 7:30 in the morning. He don't get home till 3 or 4. So in those hours, that's a whole culture within itself. And those teachers, they had a phrase, loco parentis. They are your parents while they're in that set. But when you sever that bond, you lose that respect, you lose that relationship. I told a story Sunday about Willie J. Tolles, who not only taught in the school, but he taught outside of the school in the community, because we knew him, because he came through our community. He was, he talked to our parents, he connected to our parents, he had that relationship. So those teachers that came out of those HBCUs, and that might be a thing too, the integration thing, that might have put, damper that relationship. Because when you leave that HBCU, then you go to the other schools don't even have us in mind. We see that today. We see that. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
we're going on a commercial break. I'm gonna ask you to pause right there. When we come back, I want to pick this up, because I think that one of the things we got to grapple with is how, maybe because of our own bitterness or brokenness, bruising, and whatever you want to call it, those of us, particularly those of us who are in positions like teachers and counselors, maybe the police officers, if you want to count them, healers in our village, the ministers and the pastors, there's a toll, I think, when we bring our own pain and brokenness into those powerful roles. Like I was just talking to my sister earlier about what happens when you forget that being a teacher is a spiritual calling, or being a healer, or being a counselor, or being, when you have that level of responsibility as a minister or a teacher or a counselor over that many people, where your words or your actions or your behaviors influence that many people, then to me, that's a ministry. And that's a spiritual calling. And what happens when people in that role lose touch with the spiritual nature of that role, even being behind a microphone on a radio show? Like, there are moments where if I'm not conscientious, my energy impacts people in very particular ways. And so when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about that, like how conscientious we need to be at that level in those roles about not perpetuating the very violations in the village that we're talking about. So save space today with Brother Shomari. Coming up on the commercial break, and if you want to join our conversation, hit us up at 215-634-8065. Again, that's 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. We're addressing violations in the village so that we can bring the vitality back to our village. Stay tuned.
Building an Understanding of Lab Basics, a workforce program in partnership with ECLOS Institute focused on reskilling adults and preparing them for career opportunities in Philadelphia's growing life science industry. Participants will learn lab skills, gain access to an employer mentor, and upon graduation, receive a brand new computer. The deadline for applications is Wednesday, June 30th. For more information, call 215-966-6076 or visit us at sciencecenter.org.
Remember the last time your family visited the forest? It's a place of wonder and imagination for the whole family, where stories come to life. And it's closer than you think. Ready to plan your next visit? Make the forest part of your story today at a local park near you, or find one at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Want the latest in word swag?
Check out the shop tab on wordradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on wordradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black.
Talk media.
Save space with Sincerely Sarita.
Sincerely Sarita.
Right now on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Independent Black Media.
Hey! I don't need your money. No, I don't need your privilege. All I need is justice. For all the things my family's seen. Never been accepted. No, never had no shining thing. Always been exempted. 'Cause you only know me by my name. Oh, oh, no, no. Survive. Hey, hey, oh, survive.
This week, we're saving space for Brother Shomari, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we're talking about building community, restoring the village, resurrecting the village, actually. You know, back in 2006, some of you may know, some of you may not know, I co-authored a book with my brother Butch Slaughter called Why Our Children Hate Us, How Black Adults Betray Black Children. And that was about, like I said, 2005. We published the first one in 2006. A lot was going on for me in 2006. Later on that year, my father had died in 2005. Later on in 2006, someone who was significant to me, Bobby Dell Jones, passed away. Around the same time, we're publishing the book. When we did the book, though, you know, when we did this, we did a workshop at the University of Pennsylvania. Several hundred people, very, very well done, well attended thing. And at the workshop, we had these T-shirts because we were supposed to have right afterwards a book that I was going to do called For the Love of Black Children, Strategies to Overcome the Hate. And actually this T-shirt, if you can't read it, says For the Love of Black Children by Any Means Necessary. It's been 15 years and I haven't produced For the Love of Black Children yet. I made a commitment that I'm going to produce it this month. Well, actually next month, July 15th, in honor of my grandmother on her birthday. She would have been, I think, 97 on this upcoming birthday. And so, in that spirit, this is where a lot of this conversation emanates from, because I really want to be honest with you what happened. When we did For the Love of, Why Our Children Hate Us, that was supposed to be part one, where we kind of really laid out a framework of what's going on and how Black adults are systematically, whether it's intentional or not, we participate in the sacrifice of Black children to this system. They would have called the system the American Nigger Factory. We put a name on it and called it Moloch, the sacrifice to Moloch. But, it's the system that devours our children. One of the violations that I'm still grappling with, to be honest with you, which is why it's taken me so long to do For the Love of Black Children, because I actually lost my heart writing and dealing with and speaking and traveling, talking about why our children hate us, because I realized that our village was not ready to offer the love, offer the heart that we need on behalf of our children to move to For the Love of Black Children. We didn't have the village infrastructure there to love Black children and provide what we are supposed to, the protection, the provision, the preparation, and the structured procreation to bring forward powerful generations. It was not there. And there was no commitment there that I saw, whether I was in Milwaukee or Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, to bring that forward. People talk the good game, but the work, the kazi necessary to create a village that's based on love, loyalty, and Black life was not there. And what Why Our Children Hate Us pointed out, and was not intended to point out until we actually did the work and the research, was there are many Black people, Black teachers, Black school administrators, Black counselors, Black juvenile justice workers, Black probation officers, Black ministers, the list goes on, who have made a deal with the devil, accepted the Faustian bargain, where many of our paychecks, many of our budgets are predicated on the perpetual misery that Black families and Black children endure. I want us to get that, because I think that that's a quandary that we're in that we don't talk about enough. And that is the fact that most Black middle class and most Black wealth or income is derived from these social service programs that are designed never to eradicate trauma. We just want to be trauma informed. I never hear anybody talk about trauma eradication. I don't know what being more informed about our trauma does for us. We know we're traumatized. That's why we end up with the language saying you should become more vulnerable. You don't want people, we're the most vulnerable people in the globe. Vulnerable, I did this before, means susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. You can't get no more vulnerable than Black people who can't provide for themselves, protect themselves, who aren't prepared for the world that's coming, and have no structured acts of procreation or to protect what they procreate. So we really want to become invulnerable, not more vulnerable. We got to get this language right, because we're creating structures that by design destroy our children. And we are complicit as a class of people who are educators, who are workers, social workers, and all of those things. We literally help sustain and create the infrastructure, the factory process that is designed to produce broken, bruised, bowed Black people and Black children. And I believe that that's a systemic violation. Our participation in the systematic destruction of the Black future, that is a violation that we need to address and deal with. I also believe that our participation in these things destroys our hearts. We lose our heart because we know better. And you have to begin to lie to yourself, to numb yourself, to engage in an act of dissonance for you to participate every day in these degradation systems that destroy Black life. So you have to begin to tell yourself that your children deserve it. Yeah, they so bad, they're so evil, they're so demonic, they're before the grace of whatever the othering process is that can make you numb yourself for your participation in this system that is predicated on the destruction of Black life. You got to begin to lose your heart in order to participate. So now we have heartless, deal with the devil making gatekeepers who go into their positions as politicians and teachers and social workers, replicating pain, trauma, suffering, deviance, dysfunction, because that's the cycle that actually generates an income and generates a purpose and significance in the Black village, now called the Terror Dome. It's like this cycle, this volitional cycle that we're locked into, where literally our paychecks are predicated on the perpetuation of the pain, trauma, suffering, misery, the trouble, the dysfunction of Black children and Black families. I believe we have to figure out how we as a village break that cycle and begin to engage in systemic and systematic atonement for our complicity in sustaining the infrastructure that by design destroys Black love, Black loyalty, and Black life. That's my soapbox, and that's why we're having this village resurrection conversation. If you want to join, hit us up at 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. When we come back, we'll continue our fireside chat with Baba Nasheed Ali and Sister Malele Sullivan. And if you want to join, we'll add you into this village conversation. Stay tuned.
Enjoying summer vibes in the same sweatpants you wore for the past year. It's time to change things up. That's right, that Philly summer feeling is almost here. The city is ready, and so are all the shops, restaurants, and museums you've been missing. Get vaxxed, get dressed, and get back to all the things you love about Philadelphia. Go to ReadySetPhilly.com today to plan your triumphant return.
A Night of Passion makes a married doctor question his assumptions about love, lust, and monogamy. In The Marriage Pass, a tale of domestic suspense from Brianna Cole, smart, sexy, and filled with drama. The Marriage Pass explores the boundaries of a relationship by taking the what if of a free pass. One partner's consequence-free night with their greatest temptation to a new level. Pick up your copy of The Marriage Pass by Brianna Cole today, everywhere where books are sold. And for more information, visit BriannaCole.com. That's BriannaCole.com.
The Word Radio newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on Word Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the Word Radio newsletter. This is Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Grab your mic. It's time for Kayla J's Karaoke Song of the Day.
In heaven, that will return. Let my hands be used to build and not destroy. Let my words speak truth to every girl and boy. Make my feet to go wherever there is need. Oh, let my light so glow that all may see you in me. Thy will be done. Thy will be done. On earth as it is in heaven. Thy will be done. Lord,
Thy kingdom come.
may I have clarity of mind.
That's right, y'all. Clarity is what we're trying to get to. Clarity of mind. Reminds me of The Wizard of Oz, y'all. One of my favorite movies. And in fact, if you want to journey with us, there's some movies that I really think are village building movies. If you learn the lessons, the pros and cons. One of them is Wizard of Oz. I think that they're all on their particular journeys. I resonate most now in this leg of the race with the Tin Man who's seeking his heart. Seeking a heart. Because that's the thing I would admit to most to. I wasn't ever beguiled by the money or the deal with the devil, the trade-off money for Black children. My spirit has not been broken. But I do know sometimes in order to cope with the inside of that belly of the beast, I lost my heart. You can lose your heart for your people. You can become iron-hearted, cold-hearted, broken-hearted even. And you lose sight of being open-hearted, full-hearted, and brave-hearted. We'll talk a little bit about that. I put up some defenses and some walls around my heart in order to be able to deal in schools like Simon Gratz and CEP and the inside of the Juvenile Justice Center and in prisons. You buy into the personages and you buy into the stereotypes about who those people are. And those stereotypes actually reduce them from their peoplehood. And so you go in thinking you got to be a certain way. So you deal with brothers from a very bitter kind of iron sharpens iron. Everything is harsh perspective, because you become cold-hearted, like I said, iron-hearted, steel-hearted, broken-hearted. I know that in my work on the professional side, I deal with Black women from a very distant, aloof place. I don't want to seem. I'm always conscientious about the boundaries. I started teaching when I was 27. The young ladies that would be in my class or in my counseling sessions, they're 17, 18. They're looking at me like, oh, that's an old head who normally be hitting on me. So there's a lot I would have to do to create space, between myself and them. And I lost my heart in doing this work over the last 20, 30 years because I felt like I had to kind of shelter that away or wall that off because things get misinterpreted. So you become hard with the brothers and you become distant with the sisters. And then even that begins to replicate this cycle. It chips away at the idea of the love, the loyalty, and the life, the vitality that we need to bring to our work in the village. So I'm sharing some of my things, and I'm going to bring Baba Nasheed and Sister Malele back because I know you all work in these capacities. So just from the perspective of how do you all go about, because I know neither of you made the deals with the devil as well, but I'm wondering how you all go about dealing with the heart and sheltering your heart or keeping your heart and your spirit, not letting that be whittled away. And how you've seen that happen in some of the work that you've done or the places you've associated, and how you protected yourself, and how you suggest fellow gatekeepers, for lack of a better word, can protect themselves from becoming iron-hearted and losing their spirit in this village vocation work. Let's start with you, Bob and Nasheed.
All right. So your question is, how do you keep
Number
your
one, before
strength?
you get to the how, talk about how you see that in your work. Like I shared a little bit about how that was reflected in the work I did as a college access coordinator or a teacher in schools, how it goes in the prison. Sometimes your guard is always up. How does that manifest in the work in the field that you're in? And then how do you personally prevent that from hardening your heart?
All right. So it's what I see and what I'm at. So okay, so I deal with the community. I work with the community right now. I've always worked with the community. And some of the areas that I worked in the community was with foster care, was with after school programs, which is with family centers, but it was always community oriented. Just recently, working in jails, going to jails and talking to prisoners. It's always community because that's where they're going. That's where they're coming from. They come from a community. They go into a community. We live in a community. So what you see and what you involve yourself with when you go in there, when I go in there, you got to have it in here. I don't see it happening any other way. It's got to be in your heart. One of the great speakers, it might have been Malcolm X, it might have been Kwame Ture, but we must have an undying love for our people. So you have to develop an undying love for our people. So you can't go in there putting on a face. You can't go in there because there's money involved. You have to go in there because it's in your heart to do. So in order to keep that perspective, when you go in there, in order for me to keep that perspective, there always must be some type of, say, some cultural connection that I have to maintain in order to keep myself focused. For example, the drum. You know, I have to go to the drum so that I can shed all the negativity because there's a lot of negativity surrounding this work. If we're healers and if we're educators, everything's not positive. You know, there's a lot of negativity that we see and that we hear that we have to ingest in order to guide. We have to ingest negativity in order to guide to a positive place. Mm-hmm. So in order for me to do that, I have to sometimes release myself through the drum, through the spirit of the drum. Kwanzaa, you know, I look for Kwanzaa to come around every year so that community can be reinforced. These are ways that I do it, you know, being with my family, being with my friends. And right now, right through here, I'm learning how to communicate more. Communicate, you know, I'm learning that, and you're a great teacher. So you always learning. I'm always learning. That's another one. You know, you always have to learn. You have to go to the next level, and the community teaches. You know, I'm not just a soul teacher. I don't go in there. I'm this. No. I learn from you, and we learn from each other.
How do you deal with your colleagues, your fellow what I call the defeated gatekeepers? How do you encourage them? How do you identify them, number one, and then, you know, try to spark or speak some life such that they could remember that the work that they're doing is actually spiritual work, because they're offering out an energy that's going to impact multitudes of people, right? Like, you know, I'm reflecting on some letters in these totes I have, and I got letters from former students of mine. I have letters from former young men in my mentoring programs, former little girls who I used to play basketball with. And I'm literally scared right now to go back and try to find out what has happened to those young people, because I'm literally scared that I won't be able to deal with the reality of the outcomes 10, 15 years later. Like, how do you speak life into and energy back into the gatekeepers who are in these systems that are designed to smash the life out of them and the children and the families that they work with?
So what's your definition of gatekeepers? I mean, are we considered a gatekeeper?
Well, when I say the defeated gatekeepers, I'm talking about there are many of us who do the same job, but we operate as gatekeepers. So we're not the gatekeepers. We're the healers because we haven't submitted, but we work alongside people who have. How do we keep them from doing harm in that role?
Sure. And that's what I was trying to get clear. You know, we're in and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about parents, educators. And you mentioned it too on one of those breaks, the authority figures, the so-called authority figures. They may be the elders, but they're in place where they're the gatekeepers. So the defeated ones, you know, I always look for the ones who are not defeated. I mean, you know, the ones that are not defeated. They have a certain energy. They have a certain vocabulary. You know, they have a certain way of looking at things, analyzing things. I look for them first. And then the defeated gatekeepers, you know, the ones who are not defeated, we touch the defeated ones or the ones that feel defeated. But I look for the ones that are not defeated first so that I can connect with them. And then we exchange energy too. We exchange methods and theories and analytics on building our community.
Yeah, I like that language piece you talked about, brother, because you could tell by what people say and how they say it where their mindset is. So that language piece is strong. Sister Malele, your thoughts about this at all the different levels we're trying to touch on?
Sure. Well, one thing is that I would never feel as if I would be in this space of feeling defeated because my community is too strong. That would not happen. And I know that unfortunately, that is why some people can get to that space because they don't have a feeling of sponsorship. They don't have a feeling of someone that they can go and they can connect with, that they can communicate with any time, night, you know, whatever day of the week. And so I won't be defeated. It's not possible. And that energy is something too that I sometimes go the opposite way and speak with that young person or that person who does feel like, man, I don't care. I'm giving up. I don't want to go in that direction with you at all. And I'm like, well, we have to find that out together. And how can we find that out unless we try together? So starting place. And when it comes to people who you might work with who are gatekeepers or whatever the case may be, once again, it's like I'm here because I want to be here. And then if it gets to a place where we're not connecting, that's fine. But those who I started to build with, I'm not a tourist in there. There's people who I used to communicate with that Nashi, we were doing some things maybe about 10, because I heard you say, Brother Shomari, I'm afraid to find out where I don't know is because they cut me off. It's not close my door in any way, shape, or form to them. There have been times that, you know, we may have come to a place where one of us may have disappointed one another. Who has been the person to disappoint you? I can't be defeated, and that's how I always walk into those spaces.
Yeah. So I'm gonna share some of my journey a little bit, and I pop up and need you to mute because I'm hearing background noise. But so early on in my career, let's say I'm going back to the 90s. I started in as a college. I'm just use this as an example. A college access coordinator. I was at a high school in the city of Philadelphia. I was at several different schools. One of the things that was really significant for me in that work, and as a young man, I'm about 26, 27, 28 when I'm there doing this work. And coming across the amount of inappropriate conduct from grown teachers to students who are not yet grown, but in many ways acted or appeared grown, right? But I'm trying to clean this up as much as I can. But there's just a lot of inappropriate stuff that was going on behind these school walls, and that other people knew about. They knew, like, because they'd be talking about it in the lunchroom, in the teachers' cafeteria. They would talk about which teachers or disciplinarians were messing with which students and things of that nature. People would talk about who was getting hooked up on their grades because they had relationships with the teacher. Like, this stuff was real stuff that was happening. And I know it happens in a lot of other settings. I know it's happened. I had a mentoring program where a lot of the guys that were referred to me came from one particular probation office. Then that probation officer ended up in the news because she was selling crack to some of the juveniles under her jurisdiction. And now we have young people who have gone to schools or been in programs witnessing or being victimized by these violations. And yet we're trying to convince them that they got to do right by the village. How do we address that at two levels? What I want to get to before commercial break is how we should, but we don't, hold the violators in check. One of the things that I think we lack is a way of holding people who we know are violating their role as custodians of the village in these roles that we're talking about. And we know that they're doing it inappropriately, improperly, and yet we have no organized way of holding them accountable and dealing with their violations. So I want to start there. Then later on, I want to come back and talk about how we work to heal the children or the young adults who have been victimized by these types of things, such that they can be called forward to help us build the village. So I want to start with you, Sister Malele, and then you, Brother Nasheed, around this accountability piece, because I think it's one of the weak aspects of our village building work. We don't hold violators accountable for their violations.
Well, the term violation is a punitive term. And so I like to instead think of them as challenges, because that way challenges have a redemptive way to them, which you can come back from. And then challenges also can be seen as a good thing. So as an example, a rite of passage program that I was part of was called Cherish and Challenge. And so when you think about a challenge, you are more future focused in how it is that you want to make it better. There's also, when you think of a violation, there's an alienation component to it where you don't even want to do nothing with that thing or that person anymore. You like, nah, like you violated me. Like I don't want nothing to do with you no more. Back off. And when you consider it a challenge and how it is that you want to make it better, that's how I would go about assessing it and working with it. And so when it comes to the community, in regards to something that someone may have done improperly to a child or whatever the case may be, and I have had experiences with that young person who has some other support system, some other adult guardian or whomever, they need to know that they're going to have somebody who's going to go there, show up to court with them if necessary, write a report if necessary, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with DHS doing it or the police doing it. It has to also come from the community. There's times where you have to go to court for children and they're asking, can someone speak on their behalf? And you have some children who are going there and they're saying, no, I don't have nobody. And therefore, who are those somebodies? And so once again, what I say is that Freedom School movement helped in this city years ago be those somebodies in massive ways. That was one of the times when I noticed that the most African American students were going into education, into these other areas, especially Black males. And back in the early 2000s, there was 22 sites in our city. 22 across the city of Philadelphia. Now we have 2. And so I see it as, a way of, that's a challenge. I see them putting in $1.5 million into curfews. Why is it that this money instead is not being invested for young people in the summer and helping them to get a PYN job, a Philadelphia Youth Network job, and also learn at the same time and be taught by people like Dr. Carr? It's like, come on. And so for me, that's a challenge. So that is some place that I will always go to a place and speak about, write about. I will go to city council and talk about, like, why is it that we're dumping money here in this way when we want to get them when they're in trouble, but we're not putting more support in areas to help them not be in an area of violation or be served by those who are violated them. It's a challenge. So we have to constantly speak to those challenges.
All right. But Nasheed, your thoughts. Start with the adult side of the equation and how we deal with the challengers. I'm gonna try this on. I'm trying a new language. I think that's, some of the stuff I've been exposed to, it's some egregious stuff that happens under the name of people who are caretakers in our community. I don't want us to run from that conversation. Some egregious stuff, from parent-child violations to teacher-student violations to counselee violations. And it's very hard, in my opinion, to get young people to trust the village when there have been violations in the village they've received from very people we talk about. We know about what happened with the Catholic Church with the priests. Like, so that thing is a real thing, and if we're going to really restore the village, we gotta deal with that, because we haven't done a good job of clearly dealing with that on the side of the children or the side of the people who've been harmed. How do we address that? How do we begin to have an accountability structure, real serious dealings with people who feel like they can do those things?
I think that's one of the things that we have to build within ourselves. We have to build the gatekeepers who are not defeated, quote unquote, must join together to come up with an accountability system. Because sometimes single individuals who see these challenges and violations, when they address it, I want to say all chaos breaks out. All chaos, I've seen it happen, where a child might be in the midst of being violated and you know about it. So who do you tell? Because some people are in it too. The people that you would tell know about it. Like you said it, they are aware of it too. So there's really no one to tell. And then when you tell it, it changes. And then it comes, and returns on you. So we have lost the ability to take each other into accountability. Because now you got to think, if you do that, if you say, well, I'm gonna hold you accountable, then you're wrong. If I speak accountable language, for example, I'll take you off the air or you'll lose sponsorship, for example. For example, if you speak against it, morals, if you deal with morality, and then you look at TV, just recently, you look at TV and you say, I know this is not correct, but you can't speak on it. Because if you speak on it, then you're wrong. Because everybody wants to be in the know and in the groove. They want to be what's happening. And the work that we do is not really what's happening. It's a lifetime work. When you're in the community, and you're a gatekeeper, as you say, that's a lifetime job. I'm learning that. Like, you might get your college education a long time ago, but if you're in that community work, you're always learning. You don't have to have a master's or a PhD, because you're always learning and it's always coming to you. So accountability, that's the thing. How do How do I join with you in Malele to hold that what we see as a challenge to face that and be able to change that, because it needs to be changed. Because right now, the negativity is what's going on. I mean, we're sitting in the middle of it now in Philly. You got all of this money coming into different organizations. So my thing is, okay, an organization gets money, but on the other hand, we're talking about we don't have generational wealth, but we got billions of dollars going into organizations to fight violence, but we're still not using the money and the resources we have to build generational wealth, because we say generational wealth will stop the violence. But again, you got all of these billions and millions of money that's coming in here. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to, give those young people the houses they need for their children?
Oh, buddy, we got curfew patrol. We got more police officers, and we got basketball camps. That's what we get. We don't ain't nobody. That's my point. We're letting, like, to me, that's a violation, right? This idea that we let them create this narrative of these podunk solutions that we know don't work. They've never worked. And yet we sit idly by, and instead of challenging that, we're literally lining up for the breadcrumbs that we hope fall off of that table on behalf of our children. That these are violations, man, that I think that as a community, we got to man up and woman up and atone for, because if we don't, it's going to be virtually impossible to ask our children or to compel our children to stand on behalf of and with the village. The village has to be there in order to raise the child. And right now, I think that by and I'm gonna just call it what I feel it is, our lack of integrity, our making deals with devils. And again, we're not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the collective energy of our people. The collective vitality has been sacrificed. The vitality of Black love, Black loyalty, and Black life has been sacrificed to deal making, to people whose hearts and spirits have been sacked, or to people who don't really see us into the future. And we got to really deal with that, man, because we're contributing in many ways. We're complicit in many ways to our own destruction and defeat. Before I come back to you all, I want to go to the phones. Let's talk to Tony on line 1. Greetings. Tony, I don't hear you. Tony going once. Tony going twice.
Wait a minute. Come on now.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
All right, now. How's it going, brother Shomari and everyone else?
It's going well, sir.
Okay, so I wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I think you have to be the light for a program. Like you said, you saw that there were some violations going on. And you have to be the one to stand on the moral high ground to show a better, I'll use myself. I have to be the one to stand on the moral high ground to show that there are other ways to handle getting along, dysfunction, any of those violations. You see something going on with a young person and an adult, you set an example of this is how a relationship should be between an adult and a child, and a father and a son, or a father and a daughter. Because there's different levels to all kinds of the relationships. But this is how we conduct ourselves as a student and a teacher, and we can't blur those lines. Another thing, along with being the light, being the moral high ground, we also, I think we have to celebrate the positive things that happen in the community. And we can't, in celebrating those wins that we have, we can't lose sight that the struggle never ends. The fight never ends. And that's one of the things that I say. People say that, we'll continue to fight. We'll continue to fight. No, we won't continue. It never ends. It's never ended. From 1619 to now, it doesn't end. And it's not about what I should do. It's about what I want to do. And what do I want to do to help my community? And that's how I proceed. Thanks.
And I appreciate that because that's speaking from a space of inspiration, right? This is what I want to do. What do I want to do to help my community? And, we talked a lot using Aikwe Ahmad, the difference between possession and inspiration and moving from manipulation to inspiration. And that's why we're talking about impulse to pulse. I want to come back to our conversation with each of you again now and shift the lens, same issue, but shifting the lens down to the young people or the people who've been harmed. I don't want to use the word victim, but that's the word that comes to mind, victimized by these violations. Because then what I'm finding in the young people that I deal with, both in my own community, but also in the programs and the different encounters, is this energy that I'm not going to, I don't give a F. And we know IDGAF has become a very, very clear, symbolic thing on a lot of your social media platforms. And that energy is really out here in our Black communities. That I don't give a F, everything's about me. And I say to people, real Black men give a F. Like that's how you define your manhood. You're the stewards of the community. You're in the spirit of the Maasai word, they say Kasaria and Getter, which means, are the children or is the village well? That's how you measure yourself. And yet we got a generation of particularly our young brothers who walk around proudly saying, I don't give a. And I think that that's a function of, again, feeling like the village wasn't there for them in the way that the village is supposed to be there. We always say it takes a village to raise a child, but then we don't understand that that's actually a responsibility. It's actually a sacred obligation. You don't just throw it out there and say it. There needs to be a village in place for the children that we're trying to raise. And so I believe that these challenges or violations have led these unresolved challenges and violations. Let me be clear about it. I think that our lack of resolution to them, our inability to protect our children, has spawned this IDGAF mentality in many of our young people. How do we actively and proactively heal that energy? Because I believe that that's the number one challenge that we have to face as a village. Sister Malele. I think you're on mute again. Your lips are moving, but nothing's being heard. There you go.
It's like four levels when I see doing this work in the village. And, for me, here we go.
All right, so Sister Malele, I think I have
a lot of times with intervention.
So I'm gonna ask you to hold for a minute because your connection is not coming through as clearly. So I'm gonna ask you to hold, and hopefully the producer can work that out. So I'm gonna go to Baba Nasheed and then come back to you. Baba Nasheed, how do we heal this IDGAF energy that's culminating, in my opinion, as a result of the challenges and violations that have gone unresolved in our village?
So really, that's where the work comes in at. Because, that attitude, I don't give a, what you said, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, that was going on in my generation. That was going on when I came up. I don't know about the generation before me, but I know as a urban youth of the 60s, I don't give a F was part of it. You had mentioned something earlier about Miles Davis, and he had that attitude. So what? So I don't give a F right now. That's what we have to work with. We have to do. That's what we have to approach in a village fashion for those who do. Because I'm looking at my development. I don't give a F, but I had people in the community, including my family, who set me down and explained to me why I should give a F. And they're not going to let me go down that path. So, that's the role of the village right there. And it wasn't only my parents or step parents, but it was the minister, it was the Muslim, it was the barber. And, I do a thing on the grapevine, and through the grapevine, there was saving factors. I mean, even the corner boys on the corner said, I heard you ain't giving a F, and that's not you. You don't belong out here. You belong to do something else. So we have to develop our skills. It's not going to be brought with a whole bunch of money. You got, like I said, you got to have it intrinsic. It's got to be that humaneness and that undying love for our people that money can't buy. And then you build that program from that. Malele, she emphasizes the Freedom School. I've seen the Freedom School in action, been on some of the Freedom School trips. And the Freedom School is that. But it came out of that. It came out of, we have to educate our own. We have to educate our own. It came out of the South and the Southern movement, where students from SNCC and from North would go to the South to teach the youth. So we have to do that. We have to teach our own. We can't let them go and let somebody else teach them.
Right. Right. Yeah. When we before we sign off, Pop, I'm gonna ask you if you have a thought about a process, atonement, a healing approach we could use to really overcome this IDGAF spirit. Because I really think it's an important. If we're going to talk about acts of atonement, and I think we need to, acts of bereavement, acts of correction. I think one of the first places we need to do atonement, bereavement, and correction around is really figuring out how we heal the village to help our particularly younger people, but our people in general, overcome this selfish, I don't give a F, I got to do what I got to do mentality, because you can't build a community and you can't sustain the village with that mentality. I think Sister Malele fell off, but what I want to do is go to Maurice, line 1. Greetings.
Because I appreciate each and every one of your guests, what they're saying. All of them are making sense to me. But I go back to the young guys, because I tell you, I used to be a prison guard. So I talk to everybody knows me in my neighborhood out here in Southwest from being a prison guard. And the thing they don't see that I talk to the young fellas is they don't see anybody in the neighborhood black that own anything. We don't own the stores. We don't own the hardware. We don't own anything. So they're taught that if they don't go to college, they're nothing. See, we're not teaching them. They're learning that they get to fish, but they really need to get the fishing pole. And that's what we need to tell them. They got to get the fishing pole and bring back entrepreneurship for these guys. If you need a hustle, you get a stand. Nobody wants to work a stand anymore because that's beneath them. They look at television and they hear the rappers and all they talking about $1 million, $1 billion. Well, it's not realistic. We don't even have affordable housing in this city if you had a good job.
Right.
So we got to start from ground level up, because the blueprint has already been written. It's foreigners in our neighborhoods. I don't have nothing against them, but they're making millions of dollars off of stuff that we should be owning, that we should be having the stores. I haven't had a bean pie in 10 years. So I'm just saying we need to be more entrepreneurs and not always thinking we got to be blinging and just start making some money just to live a normal life instead of trying to be a superstar, just be a good guy. So that's just my opinion on it.
So before you hang up, Maurice, if I were to put that in a sentence, I just want to see if I capture the sentence for you. What I'm hearing you say is one of the core ways to overcome this IDGAF mentality is actually to begin to control and own some of the infrastructure in your community.
100%, because that's the main thing is we don't own our village, and we don't have a gun problem. We have a black on black problem. It's not the gun. The gun is the tool. Why is black man killing black man? That's the problem.
All right. I agree with you, sir. I think we got to deal with that. And I think that that's why we got to deal with healing the spirit. And healing the spirit is impossible to do if you don't control the village. Like you said, Baba Del used to always say, we must control the hood. That was one of his refrains, because if you don't control your village, then you don't control what goes on in your village. You can't protect, you can't provide, you can't prepare, and you can't adequately procreate from a place of safety if you don't control the dynamics of the village. That's why I said this ain't that deep. Or if you want to call it deep, all deep means is to make the simple, the clear, and the obvious simple, clear, and obvious. It's not complicated, people. We just got to have the courage, the caring, the compassion, the consciousness, the community, and the clarity to make it so. Let's go to one more caller before we go to commercial break. Cliff, line 2, greetings.
Just drove past the liquor store, see about 10 brothers at the liquor store just drinking. You understand what I'm saying, bro? So here's my point, right? So if they're doing the same thing, let's say they do the same thing down in Philly, right? So all I'm saying is, and I'm being sincere about this, you know, Brother Marie, spread love, man. These some good brothers, man. Just talk. So all I'm saying is that tune in to a black radio station, particularly in Philadelphia, and just listen to the vibe. So if they were smoking, drinking, just listen to this program. You know what I mean? And it would spiritually and subconsciously, man, have an impact to change the thinking. And that's what we need, bro. If we still got black folks, we just got, you know, celebrating Juneteenth. If we still got black folks, which is going to happen, celebrating the 4th of July and Christmas, brother, we've got a long way to go. And it's a mindset. And that's all I'm simply saying, bro. So we can't even think about black support, Black Wall Street, because, man, the concept of just being pro-black is gone. Not to mention the music coming from our rappers, which is self-destructive. Everybody got a gun. Everybody want to kill. And then you wonder why we got crime and killing in our community, bro. It's a spirit, and that we're opening up, bro, and it's influential. It's having a major impact on our community, bro. And if we're killing each other, no respect for each other, and I'm closing, then how do we expect the white man to respect us when we don't even respect ourselves? Thank you, brother. I'm out.
Right, I hear that. I'm not as concerned about the white man thing because I know that it begins and ends with us. And that's why we're going to continue this conversation, because I believe that the key to the healing is the healing this intentionally programmed and orchestrated IDGAF spirit. And we understand as black men, our whole definition of manhood rests on giving a darn about the village. That's the whole, I don't care whether you're talking about the Maasai, I don't care whether you're talking about the Kuyu, I don't care whether you're talking about any concept, Iwa Asafo, the definition of the manhood, Kaseri and get it means, is the village well? Are the people well? Because if they're not well, that means you're not doing your job. And so if you can now unprogram that consciousness and now have the very same men in our culture talking about, I don't give a darn, that's the key to the defeat that we're in right now. And I think the conversation I want to have throughout the rest of this time during this week is how do we begin to heal that energy, that spirit, that heartlessness, that energy, because I think that that's the primary place of atonement, primary place of grief, primary place of correction and discipline that we as a village need to aim our energy. Coming up on a commercial break, when we come back, the final segment of today's Save Space with Brother Shomari. And what I'm going to do is begin to ask the question that we will pick up on tomorrow. So stay tuned.
The Mattress Man is a second-generation family-owned mattress specialist business since 1988. Open 7 days a week, located at 7421 Stanton Avenue. The Mattress Man discounts Serta, memory foam, orthopedic, and ComfortTech mattresses every day. You deal directly with the owner, Julia, to ensure you get the best price and best service. The Mattress Man offers same-day delivery on most models to most areas. Ask about the word discount. Call 215-424-5550.
The Black Words Book Club.
Word Radio's conversation on books that explore the African American experience through social, economic, and environmental justice issues. Tune in the second Tuesday of every month on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro, 4 p.m. till 7 p.m. The Black Words book for July is White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America by Penn's Dr. Anthea Butler. Be sure to listen live as Nick Taliaferro will hold a contest for a giveaway book bundle that consists of 4 titles from Kensington's Defina's Authors of Color's newest release. Don't miss it, Tuesday, July 13th on Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Attention for Word members. Get your copy and receive a 20% discount when you purchase at Harriet's Bookstore or Hakeem's Bookstore. For more information on the Black Words Book Club, visit wordradio.com. The Black Words Book Club is sponsored by Defina. Defina is an imprint of Kensington Publishing Corporation, America's independent publisher, concentrating on authors of color.
Hey, Philly, unless you're planning on enjoying summer vibes in the same sweatpants you wore for the past year, it's time to change things up. That's right, that Philly summer feeling is almost here. The city is ready, and so are all the shops, restaurants, and museums you've been missing. Get vaxxed, get dressed, and get back to all the things you love about Philadelphia. Go to ReadySetPhilly.com today to plan your triumphant return.
This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
You know that feeling? Like every door is closing and you just can't see a way out? Being unemployed, underemployed, or just out of school can feel like that. But when you find the right tools, suddenly everything just clicks. FindSomethingNew.org offers resources that help develop new skills that can position you for careers in today's growing industries, from healthcare and manufacturing to cybersecurity and alternative energy. Find your path to a new career at FindSomethingNew.org. A message from the Ad Council.
Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. Right now on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD.
Independent Black Media.
And welcome back to Save Space with Sincerely Sarita, but today is with Brother Shomari, and this is our final segment of today's program. Let me get my censoring right. Okay, there we go. So I'm in the screenshot. I got to listen to my producer a lot more. Sorry, Kayla J. I got the message now. I'm clear. So again, y'all, for the love of Black children, what are we willing to do by any means necessary to create the village that's going to be necessary for the love of Black children? That's what we're going to be talking about all week long. So what I want to do, and I know each of you can only weigh in briefly. Baba Nasheed's not going to be with us tomorrow. He'll join us again on Thursday to continue our fireside chat. Looking forward to conversing tomorrow with you, Sister Malele. I'm actually invited some of my other colleagues from different social programs throughout the city who work with young youth or adults across the village. COVID-19 last year, March. It's about March 13th, if I'm not mistaken, where everything shut down. And now all of a sudden, it's the summer of 2021. There's quote unquote money on the street now for people to return and do what they're supposed to do. And gun violence prevention money has been added to the equation. So now our young people are going to be deluged with these requests for them to come back to the programs. The very same village, by the way, for me, that disappeared on them almost for a year since last March. The churches shut down. The mosques, many of them shut down. Now, we know individual ones might have stood their ground, but as a collective part of the village, the religious institutions disappeared. Many of the programs either disappeared or went virtual, which is just like disappearing. The educational system disappeared. The probation officers, social workers, the village disappeared. I think we got to admit that at some level. And now this village is going to, quote unquote, miraculously reappear because somebody put some money out there to make it reappear. I believe that if we don't atone and acknowledge and work with and maybe even apologize to our young people as a village for disappearing on them, probably when they needed us the most, given how much the world changed right in front of their face, I think there's going to be a lot of blowback on their behalf to these attempts to go reach them now when nobody tried to reach them over the last year. What's a way that we as a village can acknowledge that there's probably some truth to the statement I just made and avoid the blowback in our efforts to reach back to our young people moving forward? Let's start with you, Sister Malele, and then close out with you, Brother Nasheed.
Yes, so I do want to acknowledge that I was out with our youth. I did not abandon them. I was still knocking on doors, still doing home visits, still had scholars in my car, still was doing opportunities for them to do social engagement where we were helping to serve food with people. I didn't go nowhere because I know that you can't just magically cut off servicing and support your phone number, your email. And I also work with people who work like that. And so, you know, that's the care and character of this work. And like you said, yes, things went virtually and people were disappearing, but we know too, people were disappearing because they were dying. And you had some positions where they were not able to do things the way that we were having them happen because they were no longer available. And as an example, I had scholars that I was working with that were on campuses at that time, college campuses, going to school. But if your RA is sick and they're not there no more and you having a hard time replacing who the food service staff are who's serving them, then yes, for emergency purposes, things did need to shut down in certain ways so that we didn't have additional death and sickness in other areas that we just were not, we were not prepared for how the country shut down in the way that it did, but in some ways it had to happen. Otherwise it would have been that much more worse with illness and things of, you know, people not knowing how to handle that situation. But there were a lot of people and places that still kept themselves open and not just in a virtual way. And again, if you don't have that energy in you, nobody can make you have it. And let me say this too. The work that I was doing in this regard, it wasn't paid work. Like I said before, it was a situation of before the pandemic even happened. I'm not a tourist in the lives of these young people. And when someone did offer me paid work, I said, oh, thank you. That's what's up. That's gas. But come on, let's go. This is what we got to do. And when the young people know you have that energy, and it's not even about the effort, it's about, I would want somebody to have done this for me, therefore it's going to happen. And I am somebody who gives an F.
Right.
So you might have a young person say, oh, I don't give an F. Well, I do. Now what? Let's work it out.
Right. And I do believe that there were exemplary individuals or small efforts that didn't go nowhere. I'm a part of many of them. But I'm talking about as a village, a collective in the city of Philadelphia. And I taught the young people would tell where y'all been. They'll tell you straight up.
Right. And
so I think it's something we got to deal with.
We had to talk to them. Other people, like you said, you and other people, we had to talk to those other places and say, like, look, you got to like open the doors. But if it wasn't for people who were doing it in small incremental ways, then the bigger version of it would have not got back to where it is now. So, right. You know, it's not always going to be this situation where people are going to be making headlines and you knowing that, you know, like the Black doctors. I was appreciative of knowing that they was out there and they was communicating with people. They were still touching people. They were still, you know, doing more than just drive-bys and cars, because it was just a situation of, even if you just wanted to talk to somebody and not go to an urgent care and not have that experience, they were there even for that. But, you know, that got a lot of national attention. But that also was happening in small ways across our city that I know of, that it wasn't necessarily being a light shined on them. And then I was like, thank you. Now you saw bits and pieces of that growing to the point where then it came back to those big doors and organizations.
Right. And we'll pick up on this tomorrow, because I believe that, you know, there has to be some kind of reconciliation of this COVID moment, because I believe that what you're saying is true. I also believe that I know that there's an energy of abandonment, feeling abandoned by the people who were supposed to know and be able to provide guidance. And I think that we got to intentionally deal with that. We can't just pop back up, or people can't just pop back up and just think that, that doesn't need to be addressed. So Pop, your thoughts on this? You got about 3 minutes. And this COVID thing, I think, is a major thing of atonement and village rebuilding that we're going to have to deal with. I don't think we could just pop back up and say, hey, it's back to normal. We're here. Come back, young people. We're here for you. We love you. I think we got to do something extra to really repair that breach. Your thoughts about that?
Well, I think Malele brought up a good point, and that was that this COVID thing was real to our community because our community lost a whole lot of people. These pop-pops and grandmoms that we talk about, these aunts and uncles, and even our parents, they lost them. I mean, that's grief and loss right there. But the thing about it is, where this money is coming in the city, the institutions that failed our community before COVID, now they want to come with this big sack of money to give it to us. But they failed us before. So what makes, if they're not planning for the future, somebody spoke about the future vision, the future vision of our community. If that's money is not for the building of that, it's going to be the same thing. And we're going to be witnesses to that again. And we're going to be repeating that cycle again. That's my 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want to say, unfortunately, I was a part of it ever since the street administration. I learned that I noticed a lot of abandonment in children in the city from that time frame. There were things that were happening around our city that were functioning in a way that it was getting better, and you were able to see that it was impacting more youth. And ever since the street administration was here, that's when I even felt a loss as a young person working in the community and doing things. And all of a sudden, I felt like it was a pandemic then. I felt like money and things, even before that time, was cut off. So, yes, we have the pandemic of, that we all experience, but this pandemic in a way has been going on where this money has been moved here and shifted here and then brought back when they feel like doing so. But again, you have people that no matter what, we're like, we're working through it. This not right. This not how you're supposed to do it. And we're going to keep coming back and helping our young people regardless.
Right. And we'll pick up a lot more on that conversation tomorrow, because that's why I say atonement, bereavement, and correction. We really haven't processed the perpetual sense of grief and loss and mourning, whether we call it gun violence, whether it was the loss of our elders and young people in COVID, whether it was the crack epidemic and the destruction of the family. There's some reconciliation around grief and bereavement that I think we have to acknowledge, because we can't just keep taking those losses and keep it moving as if those things don't mount up on us. So that's where we'll pick it up tomorrow. In our fireside chat, we got to resurrect the village, y'all. In order to do that, we got to tell the truth. So we have some more truth telling coming your way tomorrow on Save Space with Brother Shomari. Thank you, Kayla J, for your excellent production. We'll talk to you all tomorrow, 7:00 p.m. Peace.
On nights like this, I ride. Turn the music up to keep from crying. Wait till that sunshine. Please don't let the darkness keep me low halfway to the